The grand hall was filled with the sounds of soft music and the gentle murmur of excited guests. Tall columns stretched high, and golden light filtered through massive windows, illuminating the grand altar where the ceremony was about to take place. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The alien woman stood at the altar, her heart racing with nervous excitement. She was dressed in a flowing gown of shimmering silver, a blend of traditional alien designs and modern elegance. Her people had gathered from all over the galaxy, eager to witness this union. She had been chosen. She had been admired. And today she was to marry the one she had thought to be her soulmate. The groom, an alien lord from a powerful family, stood across from her. His golden armor gleamed in the light as he looked at her, but his eyes were cold. The woman's heart fluttered as she gazed into his eyes, searching for warmth, for affection, for the love she had imagined. She had waited for this moment for so long. The priest began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the hall as he spoke of tradition and unity. The woman's thoughts began to drift, her excitement mixing with nervousness. Would this be the beginning of a beautiful life, or was there something more to this moment than she could understand? As the priest asked the groom if he took her as his partner, the alien lord hesitated. The long pause seemed to stretch on forever, and a wave of unease washed over her. She had never seen him hesitate before. His voice, when it finally came, was flat and unemotional. "I cannot," the alien lord said, his words sending a chill through her entire being. The crowd gasped. Murmurs began to rise, and the woman's legs felt like they might give way beneath her. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Her groom stepped back, his face still emotionless, as if this was nothing more than a casual decision. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The Lord's eyes shifted slightly, but he did not step forward. He spoke in a tone that seemed rehearsed, like he had been planning this moment for longer than she had known him. "You are a worthy match, but not for me," he said, his voice cold and distant. "I seek a union that will bring power to my house, not one built on personal connection. You may be beautiful, but there is more to a union than beauty alone. I cannot marry you." Her heart dropped. She looked around at the faces in the crowd. They were no longer smiling. Some whispered among themselves. Others looked on in stunned silence. Her family's gaze was filled with disappointment, and her heart shattered. She had never been more alone. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away, determined not to show any weakness. But inside, she felt small, as though the entire universe had turned its back on her. This was not the future she had dreamed of. This was not the life she had hoped for. She had imagined love, true, pure love, shared between two people who respected each other. But it seemed that love had never been a part of the groom's plan. The guests began to leave. The hall avoiding her gaze, their whispers a constant buzz in her ears. She could feel their judgment, their discomfort. The moment that had been meant for celebration was now one of shame and rejection. Her cheeks burned, but she held her head high. She would not let this be the end of her story. Without another word, she turned away from the altar and walked out of the grand hall, her heart heavy with sorrow. The golden doors closed behind her, and she stepped into the cold night air, her gown trailing behind her like a shadow. The streets were empty, quiet, in contrast to the chaos she had just left behind. She didn't know where she was going, but she had to leave. She needed space, freedom from the suffocating expectations of her people. The stars above twinkled coldly, offering no comfort. It was as if the universe itself had turned its back on her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't stop. She couldn't go back. She couldn't face the shame of what had just happened. The alien woman walked for what felt like hours, her feet carrying her through dark alleys and empty fields. She had always been admired for her beauty, but now she felt like a failure. What use was beauty if it didn't bring the love she longed for? What was the point of any of it? Eventually, she found herself in a quiet grove, far from the palace and the ceremony. The trees stood tall around her, their leaves rustling in the wind. She sank down onto a soft patch of grass, burying her face in her hands. The tears came then, streaming down her cheeks as she allowed herself to feel the weight of the rejection. She had been rejected not because of her beauty, but because of what she represented. A title, a political tool, a way to advance someone else's ambitions. She was no longer the object of desire, but something disposable, something cast aside the moment it no longer served its purpose. And yet, as the moonlight filtered through the trees, she whispered to herself, "I will not let this define me." She stood, brushing off her gown, and looked up at the sky. She wasn't sure what came next, but she knew one thing for certain. She would not be broken by this. Her journey was just beginning, and she would find her own path, one where her worth was not defined by anyone but herself. The rejection had hurt, but it would not be her undoing. There was more to her than the expectations of her people, and she would show them all that there was a strength within her they could not see. With that thought, she walked forward, determined to find her own way in a universe that seemed to have no place for her, yet still left her with a glimmer of hope for what might lie ahead. The alien woman wandered aimlessly through the quiet streets, her heart still heavy from the rejection at the altar. The grand palace with its towering spires and shimmering lights was now far behind her. She had no plan, no destination in mind. The world around her felt as if it had shrunk to a dark, cold place where nothing made sense. She felt lost, disconnected from everything she had once known. Her feet carried her through unfamiliar roads, away from the crowd, away from the judgment, until she found herself on the outskirts of the city. It was here, in a secluded part of the planet, where the natural beauty of the land still existed. Large, tall trees with deep green leaves surrounded her. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of fresh earth and flowers. It was peaceful, a quiet refuge from the noise of her past life. She paused to take a breath, looking around. The peacefulness of the place seemed to calm her a little, though her mind was still clouded. The rejection, the coldness of her groom's words, echoed in her thoughts. It felt as though the weight of the entire galaxy had fallen on her shoulders. But as she stood there, something unexpected happened. A sound broke the silence. A strange noise, distant at first, then louder as it drew nearer. She turned around, her heart skipping a beat. Was it another group of guests from the ceremony? No, it was too quiet, too different. It sounded like the hum of a spacecraft. She stepped back, her instincts telling her to hide. She had no desire to face anyone right now, least of all another reminder of her public humiliation. But the sound grew louder and louder until the source came into view. A human shuttle, sleek and silver, coming in for a landing not too far from where she stood. The shuttle touched down with a soft hiss, and the doors slowly opened. Out stepped a human, a young man with short dark hair and a simple military-style uniform. His eyes scanned the area as he stepped down from the ship, looking around the unfamiliar landscape with curiosity. He didn't seem to notice the alien woman at first. His attention was focused on the surroundings, taking in the beauty of the untouched land. The alien woman froze. She had never seen a human up close before. There had been talk of them in the council chambers, stories of humans' resilience, their surprising strength, and their ability to adapt to the harshest environments. But seeing one in person was a completely different experience. There was something unfamiliar yet strangely comforting about his presence. He seemed out of place in this alien world, yet he appeared calm and confident as though he belonged. The human took a few steps forward, his boots making a soft crunch against the gravel beneath his feet. His eyes finally caught sight of her, standing alone in the grove. His expression shifted, surprise and curiosity flashing across his face. For a moment, the alien woman considered retreating back into the shadows, but something stopped her. She stood still, watching him. She had nothing to hide, no reason to be ashamed anymore. The human's gaze softened and he took a cautious step closer. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice clear and sincere. The alien woman hesitated, She had never spoken to a human before, and she was unsure of how to respond. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt stuck in her throat. How could she explain what had just happened? How could she explain the emptiness that filled her? Instead of replying immediately, she simply nodded, unsure of what else to do. Her eyes briefly met his, and for a moment, she saw something different in his gaze. There was no judgment, no pity, just a simple acknowledgement of her presence. It was a small thing, but to her it felt like a lifeline. "Do you need help?" the human asked again, his voice warm with genuine concern. For a brief moment she thought about pushing him away, about retreating once more into the solitude that had become her refuge. But the truth was, she was tired of being alone. She was tired of hiding from the world, tired of the weight of her rejection. I'm not sure," she replied softly, her voice trembling slightly. The human nodded, as if understanding something deeper than she had said. He didn't press her further, instead offering a small smile. "Well, if you need anything, I'm here. My name's Alan. I'm just here on a mission trying to learn about this place." Alan's calm and simple demeanor was almost strange to her. There was no pretension, no hidden agendas, just honesty. His words were not coated with the usual diplomatic formalities, and his presence didn't feel like an intrusion. "I'm Lyra," the alien woman said, her voice quieter this time, unsure if he would even understand. Her name sounded so foreign on her tongue now, as if she had forgotten who she was. "Lyra," Alan repeated gently, as if trying to connect with her in some way. He looked around at the trees, at the silence of the grove. "This place is beautiful. Seems like a good spot to think, huh?" Lyra couldn't help but nod. It was as though he understood the peace she had been seeking. She hadn't realized it until now. But the grove did offer a sense of comfort, a retreat from everything that had happened. Alan sat down on a rock nearby, giving her space, but remaining close enough to show that he was there. For a moment they both just sat in silence, the weight of their individual thoughts hanging in the air. There was something calming about his presence, something that made Lyra feel like she didn't have to explain herself, didn't have to hide her emotions. As the minutes passed, Alan broke the silence once again. "I don't know what you're going through, but it's clear you've been through something tough. If you ever want to talk, I'm all ears." Lyra glanced at him, surprised by his kindness. No one had ever offered to listen to her this way, without judgment or ulterior motives. It was strange. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. She had been rejected by her own people, but here was a human who saw her not as an object or a symbol, but as someone worth understanding. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Maybe I do need to talk." And for the first time since her rejection, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Over the next few days, Lyra found herself returning to the grove where she had first met Alan. The peaceful solitude she had initially sought became a place where she now met the human explorer every morning. They sat together, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking, but always with a sense of quiet understanding. Alan never pressed her for more than she was willing to share, and Lyra found herself slowly opening up to him, something she had not done with anyone in years. He listened to her with genuine care, his eyes always soft and attentive as though every word she spoke mattered. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt heard. They talked about their lives, their worlds, and their cultures. Alan spoke of Earth, of its vast oceans and towering cities, of the people who lived there and the strange customs they followed. He described the human race with such affection and pride that Lyra couldn't help but feel drawn to his words, even though her own world was so different. In turn, Lyra shared stories of her people, their complex social structures, and the ceremonies that governed their lives. She spoke of the weight of tradition, of the expectations placed upon her as a noble woman. She spoke of the rejection she had felt at her marriage altar, of how she had been valued only for what she could offer to her groom's family. Alan had listened quietly, and when she finished, he spoke softly. "I don't understand why someone would treat you like that," he said. "You're incredible, Lyra. You have so much to offer, and not just because of your status. You're more than that." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She had never been spoken to this way before. People had always seen her as part of something bigger, a piece in a grand game of politics and power. But Alan saw her as an individual. He saw her strength, her intelligence, and her beauty, not as something to be measured, but as something to be admired. Lyra looked at him, her heart stirring in a way she had never felt before. She had spent so many years hiding behind her role, behind the expectations of her people. She had never truly considered that someone might appreciate her for who she was, not just as a symbol of her race, but as a person. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. The next day, when they met in the grove, Lyra noticed a change in herself. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, to the way Alan's presence made her feel more alive. She had been afraid of losing her place in the world, of being discarded like an unwanted object, but here with Alan, she felt something different. She felt seen. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the grove, Alan turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Lyra, can I ask you something?" he said, his voice hesitant. "Of course," she replied, her heart quickening at the sudden seriousness in his tone. "What's it like? Where you come from?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "I mean, what's it like to grow up with all that responsibility?" Lyra took a deep breath, considering his question. She had never really thought about it in this way before, but she realized that Alan was asking because he cared. He wasn't just asking for the sake of curiosity. He wanted to understand her. "It's not as simple as it might seem," she began, her voice thoughtful. "Being born into a noble family comes with a lot of responsibility. I was raised to serve my people, to maintain the balance of power, to uphold our traditions. Everything I did was for the good of my family and my people. My future was already planned for me. There was no room for me to choose my own path." Alan nodded, his expression filled with empathy. "That sounds like a lot of pressure," he said quietly. "It was," she agreed, her gaze dropping to the ground. "And when I was rejected at the altar, it was as if everything I had been taught to value didn't matter. My worth was tied to the role I was supposed to play, not to who I truly am. I was nothing more than a tool to secure alliances." Alan's eyes softened. "That's not how it should be," he said firmly. "People should be valued for who they are, not for what they can give to others." Lyra felt her chest tighten as the weight of his words sank in. She had spent so many years believing that her value came from what she could offer to others. But here, with Alan, she began to see that maybe, just maybe, her worth wasn't tied to her status, her family, or her race. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "For seeing me." Alan smiled gently, reaching out and placing a hand on hers. "You don't need to thank me, Lyra. I just think you're amazing, that's all." Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was strange, this feeling that was blossoming inside her. She had never imagined that someone like Alan, a human from another world, would make her feel seen, heard, and understood. It was as if the walls she had built around herself were slowly starting to crumble piece by piece. And as she looked into his eyes, she realized something she had never admitted to herself before. She was beginning to care for him. More than just a friend, more than just someone to talk to. There was something deeper between them, something she couldn't yet name but felt with every glance, every word, every moment they shared. Lyra took a deep breath and smiled softly. "I don't know what the future holds," she said quietly, "but I'm glad to have met you, Alan." "And I'm glad to have met you too," he replied, his voice sincere. As the sun finally set, casting the grove into twilight, they sat in silence for a while, simply enjoying each other's company. There were no words needed, just the quiet understanding that had grown between them. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The days continued to pass in a quiet, peaceful rhythm. Lyra had never expected to feel this way again. After the rejection, she had thought her life would be forever changed. that she would be lost to the shadows of her past. But sitting in the grove with Alan, hearing his thoughts, seeing his kindness, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was more to her than the life she had known. Each morning she found herself looking forward to the time they spent together. The simple conversations they shared, the way he listened to her stories, made her realize how much she had been missing in her life. For so long, her world had been built on expectations that she was meant to follow, to fulfill. But with Alan, there was no pressure, no political game, just two people connecting. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, casting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Lyra found herself staring at the horizon, lost in thought. The warmth of the moment seemed to reach deep inside her, touching a place she hadn't known was still alive. "I have been thinking," she said quietly, breaking the silence between them. Alan, who had been sitting beside her, turned his head to look at her, his expression soft and attentive. "About what?" he asked gently, sensing that something important was on her mind. Lyra took a deep breath, trying to gather the words. "About my future, about where I go from here. I've always been told what my life would be. My people, they have a plan for me. I was meant to marry for power, to keep our family status intact. I never had the chance to choose what I wanted, what I needed." Alan didn't speak right away. He simply listened as he always did, giving her the space to express herself. His gaze never left her, and she could feel his understanding in the silence that hung between them. "You don't have to go back, you know," Alan said after a moment, his voice steady and sincere. "You don't have to return to that life, to the plans they made for you. You are more than that. You have the right to choose what makes you happy." Lyra's heart swelled at his words, but doubt still lingered in her mind. Could she really leave it all behind? The life she had known, the family she had been raised to honor, the expectations that had shaped every part of her existence. Could she truly walk away from it all? "I've been taught that duty comes first," she whispered. "That family and honor mean everything. But I don't feel that anymore. I don't know who I am without it. I've never made a choice for myself, Alan." He reached out and gently placed his hand on hers, his touch warm and comforting. "You're stronger than you know, Lyra. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but you do have the power to choose your path. I see who you are, and I see someone who deserves more than what they tried to make you be." Her chest tightened as she looked into his eyes, the sincerity in his gaze cutting through her uncertainty. The weight of her past, the years of being seen as nothing more than a tool for her family's power, felt like a heavy cloak around her shoulders. But as she sat there with Alan, she could almost feel that cloak beginning to slip away, piece by piece. "I don't know what will happen if I leave," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what my people will do or if I'll ever be accepted again. I don't even know if I'll ever be accepted anywhere." Alan's hand tightened around hers, his voice unwavering. "You'll be accepted by the right people, Lyra. You'll find a place where you don't have to hide who you are, a place where you can choose your own future, your own happiness. You're not alone in this." Lyra felt something inside her shift. There was a quiet strength growing within her, a realization that the only way forward was to be true to herself, to leave behind the false promises of a life she hadn't chosen. Alan had shown her what it meant to be seen, truly seen, for the first time. She wasn't just a pawn to be moved on a game board. She was a person with her own thoughts, feelings, and dreams. She had the right to pursue those dreams, no matter what the future held. The decision was terrifying, but it also filled her with a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. "I want to choose my own life," Lyra said, her voice firm and clear. "I want to live for myself, not for what others expect of me. I want to be me." Alan smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "Then you're already on your way, Lyra." For the first time in a long time, Lyra allowed herself to believe that the future could be different. She could no longer hide behind her past, behind the role that had been forced upon her. She could choose her own path, and whatever came next, she would face it with strength and courage. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Lyra felt a sense of peace settle over her. The future was uncertain, but one thing was certain: she wasn't alone. And for the first time in her life, she felt free. The decision had been made. Lyra knew that there was no turning back now. She had chosen a different path, one that would lead her away from the expectations of her people, from the life that had been mapped out for her since birth. And yet, despite the sense of freedom she felt, a small part of her still feared what the future might hold. Her past was not so easily erased. Alan had been her support through it all, but Lyra knew that sooner or later, her past would catch up with her. And that day came sooner than she expected. It was late afternoon when the unmistakable hum of a spacecraft reached her ears. The sound echoed through the quiet grove, and Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She knew exactly who it was. "Have to go," she said to Alan, her voice steady but laced with a hint of uncertainty. "Are you sure?" Alan asked, his brow furrowing in concern. He had become accustomed to seeing Lyra find peace in the grove, away from the pressures of her life, and he wasn't sure what this confrontation with her past would mean for her. Lyra nodded, her eyes focused on the horizon. "It's something I must face. I cannot run from it anymore." Alan didn't try to stop her. He simply nodded and stood beside her, offering her silent support. Together, they watched as the sleek metallic craft descended from the sky and landed softly in the clearing. The ship's doors opened and a tall figure emerged. A familiar face, one Lyra had not seen in weeks but had never truly forgotten. It was the alien lord who had rejected her at the altar. He stood there, tall and imposing, his armor gleaming in the fading sunlight. His expression was cold as usual, but there was something about his presence that still made Lyra feel small. Her heart tightened in her chest, but she squared her shoulders, determined not to let him see any sign of weakness. "Lyra," the alien lord said, his voice as cold as ever, "I see you've made your choice, but it was the wrong one." Lyra took a deep breath, steadying herself. "It was my choice," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I've decided to live my own life, not the one you and my family had planned. For me, I don't belong in that world anymore." The alien lord's eyes narrowed and he took a step forward, his gaze never leaving her. "You think you can simply walk away from everything? From your duty? Your family's name? You are nothing without us, Lyra. You are nothing without your role. You were born to serve, to be part of something greater. You will never be happy living like this, alone, with no purpose." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood her ground. The words he spoke no longer had the power to control her. She had spent so long feeling like she was meant to fit into a mold that wasn't hers, but now she knew better. She was not defined by her title, her family, or his expectations. "No," she said softly but firmly, "I am not alone, and I am not nothing. I am more than a piece in your game." The alien lord's face darkened, his anger rising. "You dare defy me?" he hissed. "You would abandon everything for this? A human? This is the end of you, Lyra. I came here to remind you of your place, to show you that you will never truly be free." Lyra's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she did not back down. Alan stepped forward slightly, positioning himself between Lyra and the alien lord. But Lyra gently placed a hand on his arm, signaling that she would handle this herself. I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said, her voice steady, though the words came with a weight of truth. "You rejected me because I wasn't useful to your plans, but I am more than that. I have the right to choose my own future, and I will not let you or anyone take that from me." The alien lord's eyes flickered with a hint of surprise, but it quickly turned into disdain. "You're a fool, Lyra. You think you can just walk away from everything? You think you'll find peace with a human? He's nothing compared to the power you could have. He can never give you what I could." Lyra shook her head, a quiet resolve settling in her heart. "You're wrong. I don't need power. I don't need to be part of a game that's not mine to play. I need something real. And I've found that. The alien lord sneered, taking a step back. Very well, he said coldly, his eyes narrowing. If that is truly what you want, then go, but know this. You will never be welcome in my world again. You will never have the respect you once had. You are no longer part of the family, you are nothing. Lyra stood tall, refusing to let his words shake her. That's fine, she said, her voice strong. I don't need your respect. I don't need your approval. I'm choosing my own path and I'm not looking back. With that, the alien lord turned, his cloak swirling behind him as he made his way back to his ship. He didn't look back, but Lyra didn't care. The weight of his rejection no longer held any power over her. As the ship rose into the sky, Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had faced the past and stood her ground. She had chosen herself, and no one could take that away. Alan stepped beside her, offering a gentle smile. You did it, he said softly. You're free. Lyra nodded, her eyes on the sky as the alien ship disappeared into the distance. Yes, she said, her voice filled with quiet strength. I am free. The days that followed Lyra's confrontation with the alien lord were quieter, but the air between her and Alan felt different, softer, yet more certain. The weight of the past, once a constant burden on her shoulders, seemed to lift with each passing day. She spent more time in the grove with Alan, now no longer just to escape but to embrace the peace she had found in her choice. As they sat together one afternoon, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lyra felt a sense of calm that had long eluded her. She had left behind the life that had defined her for so long, and with it, the fear that had always kept her in line. But even more surprising was the quiet joy she now felt in Alan's presence. He had become more than just a companion. He had become the person who had shown her that she could choose her own life. She had never imagined she would find this kind of peace, or that it would come from someone so unexpected. Alan glanced at her, his eyes warm with affection. Lyra, he began, his voice softer than usual. I've been thinking about everything we've talked about, and everything you've been through. And I don't want you to feel like you have to face everything alone anymore. Lyra turned her head to meet his gaze, her heart fluttering. The words I spoke felt like something more than just reassurance. They felt like a promise. But she didn't speak immediately, her thoughts swirling. I've spent so many years trying to fit into a world I never belonged to, she said quietly, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. I thought that by following their plans I could be happy, but I was wrong. All I've wanted is to be seen for who I am, not for what I represent to others. Alan nodded, his expression thoughtful. And you are seen, Lyra. You're seen by me. I know you're more than just a symbol or a title. Lyra's heart softened at his words. She had never known this kind of acceptance, not even from her family. Alan had never asked her to change, never tried to mold her into something she wasn't. With him, she was allowed to be herself, and that was a feeling she had learned to treasure. For a moment they sat in silence, watching the sky darken and the stars begin to twinkle above them. It was peaceful here, in this place where nothing was expected of her except to simply be. And yet the more time she spent with Alan, the more she felt that the time had come to make another choice. A choice that had nothing to do with duty or obligation, but everything to do with what she truly wanted. Finally, Lyra turned to Alan, her voice steady. Alan, there's something I've been thinking about for a while now. Something I never imagined I'd feel, but I do. It's because of you, and your kindness, and the way you've made me believe that I have a future worth living. Alan looked at her, his eyes filled with concern. What do you mean? He asked, sensing the seriousness in her tone. Lyra took a deep breath, her heart racing. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I've made so many choices for other people in my life, choices that never made me happy. But now I want to choose for myself. I want to choose you." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Lyra felt vulnerable, as though she had just laid bare her heart. But then Alan's expression softened into something that made her heart skip a beat. "You want to be with me?" he asked, his voice quiet but full of wonder. Lyra nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes. I've spent so much of my life trying to fit into a mold, trying to please everyone around me. But you've shown me that I can make my own choices, and the one I want to make now is to be with you. I want a future with you, Alan. I want to build something real." Alan's smile grew, and for the first time, Lyra saw a spark of the same emotions she had been feeling reflected in his eyes. "You're incredible, Lyra," he said, his voice filled with tenderness. "I've never met anyone like you. You're strong and you're brave, and I've never respected anyone more than I do you." Lyra's chest swelled with emotion, but she smiled, the weight of her decision beginning to feel lighter with each passing moment. She had finally chosen her path, and for the first time, she was proud of the choice she had made. Alan reached out, taking her hand in his touch, gentle but firm. "Lyra, you've already given me so much, and if you're asking me, if you want to spend the rest of your life with me, then the answer is yes." Lyra's heart leapt at his words, and she couldn't hold back the tears that welled up in her eyes. For the first time in so long, she felt truly at peace. The future, once so uncertain and filled with fear, now seemed full of possibility. "You'll be my partner not because it's what was expected of us, but because it's what we both want," Alan continued, his voice filled with love. "I don't need anything else but you." Lyra nodded, her smile radiant. "Then let's build that future together." The two of them stood there hand in hand beneath the vast starry sky. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time in her life, Lyra didn't feel afraid. She had found her choice, and with Alan by her side, she knew that whatever the future held, it would be hers to shape. The days following Alan's proposal felt like a dream to Lyra. She could hardly believe that the path she had chosen for herself, the one she had dared to take, was now leading her toward a future she had never imagined. There was no more fear of judgment, no more feeling like she was a pawn in a game she didn't understand. With Alan by her side, Lyra felt like she was finally free to live her life for herself. In the weeks that followed, the two of them began making plans, though the journey ahead was not without its challenges. The road was new to both of them, and Lyra had never expected to find herself in this position. But with every new step, Alan was there, offering her unwavering support and love. Together, they built their future on the foundation of trust, respect, and the simple belief that they could overcome anything as long as they were together. One evening, as they sat beneath the stars in the grove, their hands intertwined, Lyra turned to Alan with a soft smile. The cool night air carried the scent of flowers and earth, and the quiet of the grove seemed to embrace them. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt completely at peace. "I never imagined I could have something like this," she said quietly, her voice filled with wonder. "After everything I've been through, I thought I would never know what it meant to be truly happy. But now, I don't feel like I'm just surviving anymore. I feel like I'm actually living." Alan squeezed her hand gently, his gaze never leaving her face. "You're living because you chose to. You made the decision to follow your heart, and that's what brought us here. I'm proud of you, Lyra. You've come so far." Lyra's heart swelled at his words. For so long, she had believed that her life was not hers to control. But now, everything felt different. The future was full of possibilities, and for the first time, Lyra wasn't afraid to face it. "I used to think that my family's expectations were the most important thing," Lyra said, her voice soft but steady. "But I was wrong. The only thing that matters is what I choose for myself, and right now I choose you." Alan smiled, his eyes filled with affection. "And I choose you, Lyra. You've given me more than I could ever ask for. Your strength, your kindness, it's everything I've ever wanted." Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a warmth spread through her. In that moment, she realized that everything had changed. She wasn't just the alien woman rejected at the altar anymore. She wasn't defined by her past. She was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had the power to shape her own destiny. And it was all because of the choice she had made, the choice to be with Alan, to follow her heart, and to embrace the life she had always dreamed of. "I don't need anything more than this," she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "I don't need power. I don't need titles. All I need is us." Alan's hand gently brushed her hair back from her face, his touch tender. "Then we'll build our life together, Lyra, one step at a time. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." The weight of her past, the years of feeling like she didn't belong, seemed so distant now. They had been a part of her journey. Yes, but they didn't define her anymore. She was free to live the life she had always wanted. And with Alan by her side, that life was full of hope and love. As the days turned into weeks, the two of them found their rhythm. They explored new places, shared stories of their lives, and made memories that would last a lifetime. Lyra learned to embrace her newfound freedom, no longer carrying the heavy burden of other people's expectations. She discovered that she was capable of so much more than she had ever believed, and with Alan's unwavering belief in her, she found the courage to step into the future with confidence. One evening, as they stood at the edge of a peaceful lake, the soft glow of the setting sun reflecting off the water, Alan turned to her with a smile. "You've come so far, Lyra. You've changed my life." Lyra smiled back, her heart full of emotion. "And you've changed mine, Alan. You've shown me that love isn't about power or status. It's about trust and respect and choosing each other every day." Together they stood in silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world around them was quiet, but Lyra felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. She had found her place in the universe, not by following the expectations of others, but by embracing her true self. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above them, Lyra turned to Alan, her voice full of conviction. "This is just the beginning, Alan. Our story is only just starting." He nodded, his eyes filled with love and determination. "And we'll write it together, every step of the way." And so their journey began, a journey built on love, trust, and the freedom to choose their own path. Lyra had found her place in the world, and with Alan by her side, she knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together.